Jonathan Sacerdoti is a writer, broadcaster and commentator. He thinks the programme should be cancelled.
It sounds like a dreadful idea, not just because it's utterly tasteless. And I think you very charitably just called it an arts programme. I'm not sure it would fall in that category. It's presented by a comedian and it involves a flamethrower. I just think it's bizarre that this got anywhere in a development meeting, rather more bizarre that it's apparently been announced as a commissioned programme that's actually going to be on television.
Yes, it does sound rather unusual, but the whole remit of Channel 4 is to challenge, to provoke, and to, if not court controversy, then to get us talking. And it's certainly, perhaps it's done that.
Well, it has got us talking. And on the one hand, I'm a little embarrassed to be talking about it because it's giving them exactly what they want, which is attention. I think Channel 4, at least in this instance, but probably in quite a few others, is just this desperately attention-seeking channel. And I think the more life goes on and the more there are better and newer competitions for people's eyeballs, the more desperate they get. You know, these days we have TikTok and Instagram and all sorts of online platforms. Channel 4's increasingly irrelevant. So I think that they're now really clutching at straws with this kind of thing. And I'll just say why I think it's so tasteless, if you don't mind, because it's not just about taste. I mean, let's start with the idea of Hitler as an artist. Do you think anyone in the world would discuss Adolf Hitler as an artist who would be featured on Channel 4 these days had he not been responsible for killing more than 6 million Jews? I suspect not. He's not really known for his art. So I think Channel 4 is obviously playing a very sick game here when they say that this is about art and freedom of expression. It's not. It's not a debate on freedom of expression. It's going to be presented by a comedian. It's going to be an entertainment programme, and it's going to involve a flamethrower on art that apparently is deemed not to be worthy of people's attention, according to a studio audience. It's just desperate and horrible. And if you think about the fact that there are still Holocaust survivors around, I mean, my late father only passed away a few years ago. He was a Holocaust survivor. This is utterly disgusting. I just can't understand how anybody within Channel 4 thought this was a good idea, and how now, when they've announced it, even if they're getting the attention they want and we're talking about it on the radio, how they can still think this is a good idea. I mean, it's not too late. They could cancel it. They really ought to. It's just such a horrible thought. Let me just say the words again. A painting by Adolf Hitler with a comedian joking about it, with a studio audience voting on it, being burnt at the end of the show with a flamethrower. I mean, the Nazis burnt books. The whole concept is just bizarre, tasteless, disgusting and insensitive.
And I am minded to agree with you, Jonathan. If we take out the element of Jimmy Carr, the comedian or presenter, and the flamethrower, which just sounds utterly ridiculous, is there not a conversation here to be had? He was a monster, will forever be remembered as a monster. But should we still associate the monster with, I say artwork, his artwork was rubbish, but with the work he produced in his spare time?
So listen, if we want to have a debate about whether or not an artist's political views or problematic life means that we shouldn't consume or appreciate or even enjoy their art, I'm all for that. And just for the record, I'm not one for cancelling people's work very easily. But as you say, Adolf Hitler, is that really where we need to have this conversation? Jimmy Carr, a comedian, is that really the person to lead the conversation? I think they've made it very clear what their intention is here. It's not to have a grown-up adult conversation about whether or not art should be somehow censored because of the artist. That's just not what they're doing here. Nothing about the description of this programme in the material they've released about it, causing us all to discuss it, suggests that this is an adult or sensible or balanced or calm debate about this issue. It may be an important issue, but Channel 4 obviously aren't concerned about the issue. They're concerned about getting as much publicity as they can, like some sort of petulant teenager. And in doing so, they just don't care about taste or decency. I think it's utterly reprehensible.
There are pieces of art, I say art loosely because it was rubbish, produced by that monster. In fact, one of our listeners said his maternal grandmother had one of his pieces of art. What do we do with the artwork produced by Hitler?
You know, is that a question anyone's ever asking? Because they've got one hanging around the house.
It's never come up before, but it's come up now. That's the problem.
Okay, well, you know what the general idea with Nazi memorabilia of any sort, and I think anything associated with Adolf Hitler probably counts as Nazi memorabilia, even if it's not overtly Nazi in its message. is I believe that instead of auctioning or buying or trading in these things, they can be given to Holocaust museums like Yad Vashem in Israel, for example, or many of the other Holocaust museums around the world, because there shouldn't be a market for this kind of stuff, because obviously it helps people fetishize it. I don't believe in destroying art. I really don't. And I don't believe as well that it's irrelevant to the whole story of Hitler. I think perhaps his attempts at art are also part of the telling of his biography. So they may well be featured somewhere, but it should be within the context of what they are, of who he was. And I think that giving those works to museums, which are going to display them as part of the story of Nazism and who Adolf Hitler was, well, that's a valid thing to do with them.
Jonathan Sacerdoti, writer, broadcaster and commentator.